A lot of what happened throughout the course of Naruto's storylines were the ends of events that took place before the series started. Kaguya's return was set up thousands of years before the first episode. Madara's ambitions formed just after the village hidden in a leaf was created, and Obito's downfall occurred during the Third Shinobi World War, when he discovered that the world was pain. A very similar concept to what drove Nagato to the dark side. And just like Nagato, Obito eventually found his way again, but he certainly caused a lot of issues during his time as a villain. By far one of the coolest villains, but nonetheless he caused a lot of issues. He was the heir to Madara's dream. He was what kept it all alive when Madara himself no longer was. But I often find myself wondering what might have happened if Obito hadn't turned into a villain. Obito was offered a legitimate choice, one that he made on his own. Yes, it was manipulated by both Madara and Zetsu, but it was indeed his choice, and he made it in favor of Madara. But I can't help but wonder, what if he hadn't? The choice really boiled down to the loss of Rin Nohara. Her death, the loss of the love of his life, was what instigated the whole thing for Obito, so let's yoink that single moment in his life and see where it goes. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. Our story starts the same as it did so much earlier. Obito Uchiha, Kakashi Hatake, and Rin Nohara are assigned to the same team under soon-to-be 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze. Kakashi has had some past trauma, which makes him prickly, not too unlike Sasuke. Obito is much like Naruto in that he never knew who his mom and dad were and only lives with his grandmother. Rin, like Sakura, has a crush on one of the members of her team and is predominantly a medic. Kakashi, despite his age, is a natural prodigy, ascending to Chunin quickly, and by the time that the Third Shinobi World War starts, he has made Jonin. Obito, on the other hand, is having trouble with just keeping up. Rin constantly gives him words of encouragement. "You can do it, Obito," she shouts over the rails, but he still gets beat down by Might Guy. Obito feels like he lacks. He's growing in Kakashi's shadow, and in truth, he is. Kakashi seems to take everything from Obito. Obito is jealous, but he doesn't hate him. He just makes Obito feel inadequate in every possible way. Obito is a crybaby. When something goes wrong, and when he gets hurt or embarrassed, he has a habit of tearing up. It's one reason why he wears goggles. All that pesky dust getting in his eyes. But Rin is always there for him, cheering him on. By the time the Third Shinobi World War starts, Minato is comfortable with letting Kakashi take command. Kakashi displays high-mindedness about himself. Obito throws it in his face when he makes mistakes, but Kakashi isn't above reminding him that, out of the three of them, he's the only one who is even recognized as ready for this rank and level of command. Everything really goes the same, as you know, but they end up going on a mission to destroy Kanabi Bridge, and Kakashi is left in charge. Rin ends up captured by Iwanin. Kakashi and Obito have a dispute on the next course of action. Due to what happened to his father, Kakashi decides that the best course is to finish the mission instead, but Obito refuses and decides to go after her. They split up. Eventually, Kakashi's conscience catches up to him. He turns back and chases after to help Obito. They make it to the cave where the Iwanin were holding Rin. They manage to save her, though Kakashi loses an eye. Doing this, however, causes the Iwanin to attempt to destroy the cave to kill them. Team Minato barely escapes with the exception of Obito, who is crushed after having saved Kakashi. Rin and Kakashi attempt to get him out, but begin to mourn when they realize Obito will die. However, before his supposed death, he gifts Kakashi his Sharingan. He then forces Kakashi to flee with Rin and promise to protect her. Kakashi does so, and eventually they're saved by Minato, who helps them finish up their mission. It's not long after that Obito wakes up in the mountain's graveyard. He's saved by a specter of the past, Madara Uchiha. Madara attempts to indoctrinate Obito as well, and in doing so, he sets things up for Rin to die. Having much of his body rebuilt or replaced by Hashirama Senju's cells. It doesn't take long for the spiral-faced Zetsu to appear and tell Obito that Rin and Kakashi are in trouble. Now, this is a trap. Madara had been the one who kidnapped Rin and sealed Isobu, the Three Tails, into her with the forbidden individual curse tag, which would automatically release when she entered the village hidden in the leaves, which would let Isobu out to cause havoc and kill Rin in the process. The plan is for Obito to witness her death and in turn realize that the world's pain is too much and submit to Madara. But there's a gamble with this, and so this is where our divergence point starts, the single moment that changed things forever. Obito rushes through the trees, Guru guiding him on the way. They eventually reach the battlefield where Kakashi is taking on scores of Kirinin all alone. Rin, knowing what will happen when he returns her to the village, decides it's better to die. She jumps in front of Kakashi's Chidori. For a moment, let's assume that Kakashi somehow managed to raise his arm fast enough that the Chidori missed her, and instead he just tackles her, unable to slow down. He would scold her for such actions, which she would attempt to justify. It's here that the Kirinin would all begin to surround them and laugh at their incompetence. In the distance, they hear a shout and see a man in a cowl with a spiral-faced mask. He rushes in to aid them, but they're still outnumbered. But that doesn't quite affect things much. Guess what? Obito has Hashirama Senju's cells, which means he's free to use Wood Style, which is a semi-overpowered nature release. Obito alone in Rage could do it in the original timeline, so what's to stop him, Kakashi, and Rin from surviving here as well? This is surely not what Madara or Zetsu had planned. They managed to rout the Kirinin, however Kakashi is still on the defensive from this new warrior. Bearing a kunai and standing between this new being and Rin, "Who are you?" Kakashi would ask, the rain falling around them, the pitter-patter filling the air and cutting through the smoke, replacing it with a gentle haze as the cool rain met with the warm ground. The being would lower its cowl and turn around, letting the Zetsu mask open to show his face. Obito would offer a slight smile. "Hey guys." Kakashi's eyes would widen. "Obito." Rin would cover her mouth in shock. She would try to process it for a moment. Obito would scratch the back of his head and give an awkward laugh. "Sorry it took me so long to come home. He would be cut off as Rin put him into her embrace, her head on his shoulder, crying with joy. Obito is speechless, and even at this point, Kakashi has come in for a hug too. Kakashi. Hugging. Obito would feel a sudden surge run up his spine and tears form in his eyes. He would bite his lip as the tears would begin to fall. "I'm home." After a while, time would pass, and it would have seemed like Obito lost the plan. What more was there to do? Obito would ask to be separated from the Zetsu, and without being able to deny it, would let him go. Obito would offer his thanks, and the Zetsu would just head off, leaving Obito with only the cowl to keep him warm from the rain. Kakashi would ask how Obito is alive, and Obito would tell them about Madara and the Zetsu and the Rinnegan and the Geto statue. It was a lot to take in, and about the only thing Kakashi understood was the mentioning of Madara Uchiha's name. But they had another issue. Rin. Rin would explain the seal to them. She had unintentionally become the Jinchuriki to Isobu by the Kirinin, who had planned for the seal to break upon entering the village. She told them that, according to the shinobi code, she needed to be willing to die before endangering the village. Obito tells her to hold up. She doesn't need to die. She just needs to get close enough to the village to get help, but far enough away that the seal doesn't break. Kakashi nods and says that it isn't as bad as it seems. Given that they now know the enemy's plan, they can hijack it, and Konohagakure could become the owners of two-tailed beasts as opposed to one. Obito says they need to find Minato-sensei. Surely he can help them. Kakashi agrees, and together they head off to find their mentor. Finding him, he's surprised to see Obito alive. Upon completion of the mission, which goes far quicker with Obito's help, they begin to find their way back to the village. They stop a good way away from the village, and Kakashi and Minato decide to go into the village to inform the Hokage and elders of what's happened, and make a plan. This leaves Obito and Rin alone. They sit in awkward silence for a while. In his head, Obito hated the fact that it had been so long since they had been together, and that there were so many things he wanted to say, but was currently drawing a blank. Rin takes it upon herself to break the silence. "You almost died to protect me." Obito would shrug. "It's no big deal, it's what any shinobi would do for their comrade." Rin sat there for a moment. "But I'm not just any comrade to you, am I?" Obito was silent. Rin then spoke. "Kakashi told me, the reason you saved me, the reason you risked your life." Obito was silent. Rin turned to him. She was currently conflicted. She had always had a crush on Kakashi, and even after hearing what Obito had done for her, she still loved him. She'd even confessed it to him. But now that Obito was back, after everything, she felt another spark. She turned his head to face her and looked at the scars, looked at his hand. "What happened while you were gone?" He would explain how half of his body consisted of the same stuff that Zetsu were made of. It was hard to explain to her, but despite his body being organic, half of it was artificial. She asked if he regretted it. He smiled and spoke. "If I had to lose the other half of my body to keep you safe, I would." Rin would be shocked by this and suddenly overwhelmed. Tears would form in her eyes for a second, and then she would just kiss Obito. This left him shocked, but after a minute he accepted it. Some time would pass, and Minato and Kakashi would return, this time with the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Kushina Uzumaki. After some time, they would decide to add a new seal to the tailed beast, an 8-trigram seal like Kushina bore, as it was the best for use in keeping a tailed beast in, but encouraging it to aid its user, as it was designed to get weaker the more the tailed beast's energy was used. They would then begin to enter the village. While none said anything about it, they were each secretly terrified that the tailed beast would still escape, but due to the efforts of the professor, Hiruzen was nicknamed that because of his vast knowledge of jutsu, and Kushina, the tailed beast remained sealed within Rin, rendering her no longer a threat. After this, the Hokage takes Obito into his office, where many of the elders and chiefs of each branch of the shinobi forces have gathered. They begin to grill him on everything he learned and heard from Madara. He tells them all he knows, which he admits isn't much. In the end, they send Anbu to the mountain's graveyard and find it deserted. Meanwhile, Team Minato is catching up. They all go out for ramen, and it's here that Kakashi offers to return Obito his Sharingan. Kakashi doesn't think it seems right to keep the eye of a deceased person who is no longer deceased, but Obito refuses this. He says he wants Kakashi to keep it. It'll symbolize their strength when they stand side by side, as well as their bond. Together, not much changes. They both join the Anbu together, especially given that Obito possesses wood release, which is also the subject of study by the Leaf. It later becomes apparent that Kushina is pregnant and coming close to giving birth. Kakashi and Obito are both put on duty, Kakashi to keep watch and Obito to help keep Kurama sealed within Kushina, and to be on standby should he escape. As it stands, Obito currently has two ways to keep a tailed beast at bay. He could use his Sharingan to take control of it, or he could use his Hokage-style 60-year-old technique entering society with bliss-bringing hands. However, a being who bears both a white half and a black half appears in front of the Anbu. He decimates them and makes his way in, where he takes the baby Naruto hostage just as in the regular timeline. Obito would recognize him as one of the Zetsu that was with Madara. Obito knows that he's in a position to save and neutralize the Zetsu without Kushina or Naruto being in danger. But as if reading his mind, the Zetsu warns him against this, saying that Rin is also about to have her tailed beast stripped, and that he needs to make a personal decision of his own on who he wants to save. Obito is shocked by this. The exchange occurs and the Zetsu leaves with Kushina, and Naruto is given over to Minato. Obito is unable to know what to say. Minato tells him to go after Rin. Obito leaves and rushes out. He calls out for Kakashi and informs him of what's going on. They would rush off to try and save her. There, they would find her surrounded by Zetsu, but together they'd manage to drive them off and save her. They would suddenly hear the roar of the Nine Tails. Obito would look back. "I need to go, Kakashi." Kakashi would grab his arm. "Not without me." Obito would push back. "No, someone needs to protect Rin. Promise me you'll protect Rin." Kakashi would nod, realizing that Obito was the best able to stop the Nine Tails anyway with this wood release. Obito would rush off, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, all the while his mind racing, hoping and praying that Kushina is still alive. If he can reach them in time, maybe he can save her. Maybe he can pacify the Nine Tails and reseal it back into her. But before he gets close enough, Nine Tails is suddenly teleported away into the distance by the flying Raijin Jutsu. Minato is doing everything he could just to keep it together, but this made it harder to reach them. Obito kept running through the trees, jumping from limb to limb. By the time he got there, he found the third Hokage and his entourage waiting by the edge of the barrier. Obito looks in and sees Minato-sensei and Kushina inside fighting. He beats on the barrier wall, begging Minato to let him in, but Minato is too busy fighting. He begins to use the Reaper Death Seal. Obito screams out for him to stop. "I can stop it, Minato-sensei! Let me in, please!" he cries out, but it falls on deaf ears. He witnesses Kurama's claw pierce through his mentor and his wife. They persist for a while, but they eventually die as well, Kurama sealed within the child. The barrier comes down, and Obito rushes over to Minato and Kushina's side to find them both dead. Hit with sudden grief, he begins to blame himself. If he had stuck with Minato-sensei, maybe they would have survived. He had tried to save Rin instead, when all he needed to do was tell Kakashi. Kakashi and Obito could have split up, but in the heat of the moment, he wasn't thinking. His mentor and Kushina were dead because he was thinking too much about his own desires. The moment fills Obito with grief on such a level that his Sharingan evolves into a Mangekyo Sharingan. Elsewhere, Kakashi collapses as his Sharingan, linked to Obito's, also evolves into a Mangekyo. In the years afterward, Kakashi and Obito would end up joining Root, after Danzo claimed that the Uchiha were intentionally set to the side, given that it was a Zetsu that attacked the village, and Zetsu was allied with Madara Uchiha. This shook Obito and Kakashi's faith in the Third. However, after sneaking into the Hokage's residence, and being freely given the information that they were looking for, they regained their faith, and continued to work by his side as his right-hand man. They eventually found that Orochimaru was conducting illegal and cruel experiments and proceeded to track him down. Both Kakashi and Obito are initially paralyzed by his killing intent, but both proceed to chase after him. Kakashi is at first stopped by the Iburi clan, but with Obito's help he breaks free. Obito and Kakashi manage to catch up with Orochimaru, and together they fight him. Orochimaru is taken off guard with Obito's usage of Kamui and Wood Release. For real, Obito is seriously broken. Not only does he get Wood Release, but he also happens to get an ability that makes him intangible when he awakens his Mangekyo. #blessed. Together they manage to apprehend Orochimaru. He faces justice according to the Hidden Leaf. While normally such actions would be met with death, the third is soft on his student and instead has him imprisoned for life. Both Kakashi and Obito continue their careers in the Anbu, and later welcome Yamato and Itachi into their group. Obito is incredibly excited to have another Uchiha in his team. However, this does not last long. Danzo's gotta catch 'em all, and so Shisui, half-blind, commits suicide after becoming completely blind and forever scarring Itachi. So yeah, Danzo further meddles in Itachi's life and convinces him that it's best to slaughter the entire Uchiha clan. Well, there is a difference. In the original timeline, Obito actually helps Itachi slaughter the Uchiha clan, and he doesn't help in this one. So Itachi partially decimates the Uchiha clan, mainly just the civilian portion, but the moment he hits the military portion, he gets slaughtered. This prompts what is left of the Uchiha clan, especially the military half, to seek revenge on the village hidden in the leaf, and they begin to perform a coup like they had planned before. Despite the casualties they faced, most of the casualties were civilian, meaning they were non-combatants. That does not diminish their fighting force very much. They begin to fight in the leaf and the Anbu are called back. That being said, Obito and Kakashi are called back as well and are forced to fight against the Uchiha. Obito has a lot of guilt about it, but he's loyal to the leaf and the third. And his fear of harm coming to Rin, who is also in the village and a potential target of the coup due to her holding a tailed beast. Kakashi and Obito stay together, and when they're surrounded by Uchiha, they get together, clasp hands, and sync up their Mangekyo Sharingan, which allows them together to form a Susanoo. They use it to defeat those coming for Rin, and the rest of the Anbu destroy the rest of the Uchiha. The only survivor would be Sasuke, a civilian that Itachi could not bring himself to kill. After this, Obito is left emotionally destroyed, having to kill his own clansmen and being one of only 2 survivors. He even knew the perpetrator of the slaughter which led to this. He feels this is also a result of his failures. Rin tells Obito it isn't his fault, but this doesn't stop him from blaming himself. Due to all this, the third retires Obito and Kakashi from the Anbu in hopes that they will make better teachers. During their off time, Obito and Rin continue their relationship until ultimately they decide to get married. Kakashi is of course the best man. Alright, come on, you can't say that we didn't all want to see this. Time skips ahead and Naruto, Sakura, and edgelord Sasuke are awaiting their sensei. The door opens and surprise, surprise, it's Obito. Obito was specifically chosen over Kakashi to lead this team for 2 reasons. One, he's an Uchiha, meaning he can relate to Sasuke at this point, and a second, he's a wood release user, meaning he can pacify Naruto. So he is a natural choice for leader of Team 7. Kakashi's fine though, he doesn't need a team. He's content reading his adult content. They do the bell test and that goes almost exactly the same. Except when they find the monument to fallen heroes, Naruto says he wants on it, and Obito says you gotta be a dead hero to be on it. Then Naruto would ask why Obito sensei's name is on it, and Obito would fumble about and say that it was sort of a mistake. He would then say that he doesn't even deserve to be on it. The Land of Waves arc takes place, and that is comically easy for Obito to deal with. The Chunin exams occur and nothing changes except Orochimaru doesn't attack, meaning more than likely the entirety of Team 7 become Chunin, with Sasuke being the one on the very top having won the exhibitions. So at this point, not much happens, as Sasuke has no motivation to grow stronger since Itachi is dead, so he wouldn't leave the village. This means most of the story is actually dealt with except for Akatsuki. From this point on, the story stays mostly the same as before, except Sasuke's there and Obito is too. This leads all the way up to Pain's attack on the leaf, but even that is dealt with when Kakashi and Obito come together. In the end, Naruto would still bring Pain back to the light, and cause him to use the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique to revive everyone in the village hidden in the leaves who died. Conan would attempt to take the body of Pain and go away with it. However, the person who attempts to take the eyes from Nagato would be Zetsu, but Conan would actually be able to stop this from happening because Conan is pretty dang strong and Zetsu is mostly just a manipulator. But currently he is out of people to manipulate. The best I can do is think that he might manipulate Sasuke, since Sasuke is technically the next incarnation of Indra, but whether Sasuke would fall for this or not is unknown to me. After all, he has no reasons to seek vengeance, as the village hidden in the leaves can't exactly be faulted for this, and given that nobody but Itachi knew that Danzo instigated, Danzo is pretty much safe from this. However, he would use Pain's attack as a reason to try to replace Hiruzen as the 5th Hokage, since Hiruzen's tenure had been marred with crisis after crisis, each of which could be said it wasn't handled the best. In this way, Danzo surpasses Sarutobi as Hokage, even though Obito and Kakashi both knew that he sucked. After all, he tried to assassinate Sarutobi at least once. At some point in time, Rin would end up pregnant and give birth to her and Obito's firstborn child, a boy who they would name Minato. Minato Uchiha. All that being said, the Ten Tails has never revived. However, this does not stop Toneri from attempting to destroy the Earth. Most of this actually occurs the same. However, things get a little more hectic since Naruto never achieved his 6th-path Sage mode, but this doesn't make him weak. He still has Kurama Chakra mode, and he has Sasuke by his side. Sasuke would be pretty strong as well, as I'd say it's pretty reasonable to think he would have gotten his Mangekyo Sharingan during Pain's assault. However, even if he's not enough to stop Toneri, Obito would be. At least, altogether they'd be able to stop him. And when it comes down to the meteorite that would have wiped out the leaf, which was partially destroyed by Rock Lee, Kakashi would have been able to defend the leaf on his own with his version of Kamui, teleporting the rock away. After this, eventually Danzo would either be too old or die in office, and so the next Hokage is to be decided. In the end, they choose Obito, due to his legendary feats which surpass those that Kakashi had in the official timeline. During the time of the Boruto era, Hokage Obito would be doing pretty well as Hokage alone, but even better with Kakashi by his side. Minato Uchiha and Boruto would likely become friends with Sarada, and end up in the new Team 7 led by Naruto himself. Boruto would grow stronger than before. However, Momoshiki and Kinshiki show up to finish the job that Ishiki and Kaguya failed. They use their Rinnegan to undo the seal on the Geto statue and begin to feed it with various tailed beasts across the world. This means that they attack during the Chunin exams, and given that Naruto is not Hokage, Boruto would not use the ninja tool due to being strong enough on his own, and guided correctly by Naruto, who doesn't need to split his attention between his job and family. As said before, they attack during the Chunin exams, and they're here for both Naruto and Rin, both of whom are the last remaining Jinchuriki that they need. They strip Rin of her tailed beast. I know this is called What If Rin Didn't Die, but we all know that that means during the Third Shinobi World War. Anytime after that, all bets are off. They take Naruto away. Momoshiki and Kinshiki revive the Ten Tails. Given that the Fourth Shinobi World War never happened, the nations aren't quite as closely knit as before, meaning the Hidden Leaf is mostly on its own right now. Momoshiki and Kinshiki command an army of Zetsu, including Guruguru, Obito's old friend. Obito mourns Rin's death alongside his son, and Boruto, Himawari, and Hinata mourn for Naruto. With the Ten Tails revived, they plan to absorb more of the chakra in the world. However, the Leaf Village led by Obito and Kakashi head off to face this new threat. Kakashi would take Kinshiki personally, and Obito would go for Momoshiki. All the while, the Ten Tails is wreaking havoc. The Zetsu are facing off against the Leaf Ninja. In the end, Kinshiki is defeated and Momoshiki is required to absorb the Ten Tails to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Having waited for this moment, Black Zetsu attached himself to the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, Momoshiki, and floods his mind with Kaguya's will. Kaguya Otsutsuki is revived, and she is supercharged now compared to what she was before, because she also has Momoshiki's power as well. And that means the palms of her hands possess Rinnegan each. Seeing that they have no choice, Obito would use his Kamui to make it to Amagakure, where he'd meet Konan. He would explain what's going on and beg her to let him borrow the Rinnegan from Nagato's body. After argument and deliberation, she decides to trust Obito and loan him the Rinnegan. Obito returns to the battlefield with a newly implanted eye. He would use it in an attempt to stop Kaguya, but she's absorbing all of his jutsu, and she is just in a completely different league. He's partially knocked out. When he sees a vision of the Sage of Six Paths. He tells Obito the history of Kaguya and the Ten Tails, and how she was defeated last time. He informs Obito that Naruto and Sasuke were the only ones who could stop Kaguya, but now Naruto is dead, and the next incarnation of Asura is not yet ready. Obito asks if there's anything that can be done to deal with this. The sage has an idea. Obito wakes up next to Kakashi. He informs Obito that they're being torn apart by Kaguya. Obito looks up and sees that the moon is slowly rising. Their time is coming to an end. It's everything or nothing. He tells Kakashi to be ready to strike with everything he has when the time comes. He doesn't understand, but agrees. Obito stands there and looks around. He thinks back. He puts his hands together and forms the signs for first ram and then snake. He proceeds to use the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique to revive all those who had died from the Hidden Leaf Village since the Chunin exams were interrupted. This brought both Rin and Naruto back to life, as well as those killed by Kinshiki, Momoshiki, and Kaguya. However, this causes Obito to die, as this is the cost of the Outer Path's most powerful technique. As soon as Naruto's revived, the sage visits him and Sasuke both and provides each with half of his own energy, awakening a Rinnegan in Sasuke's left eye and awakening Six-Path Sage mode for Naruto. He gives them each a seal and tells them how it works. Kakashi is shocked and saddened by Obito's death but has no time to cry. Instead, he decides to follow his dying orders. And as if blessed by the departed spirit of the 6th Hokage, Kakashi awakens a second Mangekyo Sharingan and hears words in his heart. Take care of her, Kakashi. Promise me. Kakashi puts his hands together. I promise, old friend. Naruto and Sasuke rush to engage Kaguya in battle. Seeing the moon rising, Kakashi knows he needs to get Kaguya out of here. so he uses his Kamui to teleport himself, Kaguya, Naruto, and Sasuke to the Kamui dimension. There they continue to battle, but they're no match for Kaguya. While Sasuke and Naruto both fight, Kakashi uses his Kamui to become intangible and go through Kaguya, and strikes her with all the power his Susanoo can muster, and knocks her into Sasuke and Naruto, who brand her with the seals and lock her away while removing the tailed beast from her body. As a new moon is formed in the Kamui realm, Kakashi uses his Kamui to get himself, Naruto, Sasuke, and the tailed beasts back to Earth. With that, the battle ends, and the only casualty is the 6th Hokage, who once more died heroically to protect his village and, more important, those he loves. Rin is alive and Kakashi watches over her, as well as Obito's son, Minato. The Hokage position is passed to Naruto, and the series seems to get back on track. Ishiki eventually attacks, but that mostly goes the same. And with that, this what if comes to an end. What do you think? I seem to recall a similar what if to this one in the past, in which Kakashi was crushed by the rock and turned evil, and Obito was a good guy. Oh look, there it is in the little box. Check that one out too if you want more of good Obito. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like. We really do appreciate all of your support. Also, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell if you'd like to see more videos like this. Until next time, friendos, peace.